Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear peneliti muda Aceh, you meet me again with Iskandar Abdul Samad. Today, we would like to discuss about generic structure of presentation in the introduction part. There are 10 checklists that you need to consider prior to conducting a presentation. First is we have to know about the aim of our presentation, whether it is to sell the product or to adopt our research findings, or perhaps to follow our recommendations. And then second one is the title of our presentation. So we have to state our presentation title, for example, the implementation of genre approach in teaching EFL students. Third is we need to know who the audience are. For example, whether the audience are a postgraduate students or teachers or policymakers. And then we have to identify the main points that we want to make. Yeah, either one, two, or three main points. And then what we want the audience to do after listening to our presentation. So this one is closely related to the, the aims of our presentation. Next is the audience. So we need to know, a number of audience that may attend in our presentation and where it takes place and so forth. Next checklist is equipment. So we have to know, what sort of equipment's available in the room, and then whether it works or not. So if it doesn't work, then we have to figure out, and make sure that every equipments are working. And then number 8 is a podium. Some rooms have a podium. So if we need a podium, then we have to ensure that the committee could provide a podium. And then documents. So sometimes, when we do a presentation, we need to bring handout with us. So we have to know whether, there is a place for us to put a handout, and then and other sort of documents. And last is dress. So we have to dress appropriately, prior to making a presentation. So today there are two things that we would like to discuss in terms of the generic structure of the presentation. The first one is what sort of things that we have to deliver, in the beginning sections or the introduction. And then secondly, we also need to consider about stating the title of our presentation and introduce the subject. So the detail can be seen in the next slide. So the beginning of a presentation is the most important part to establish a rapport with the audience, and when we have its attention. So to attract the audience attention, we could say or use the word like right, well, okay, let's begin, good, fine, great, can we start, stuff like that. So we could use that kind of word to attract the audience attention. And then don't forget to greet the audience. For example, hello, ladies and gentlemen, or good morning, members of the jury, good afternoon, guests, good evening, members of the board. So we try to greet people to engage with the audience. Sometimes when we are in a seminar or in a presentation, sometimes we have an MC in the event. So usually the MC introduce us as a speaker. For example, I'm very pleased and proud to introduce you. You know, they will, or he or she will introduce our names and who we are. And then she or he says, he or she is known for. Now I'll turn the floor over to today's speaker. And then it is time for us to take the floor. And at this time, we don't really need to repeat what the MC has done, in the or prior we give a speech. Um, yeah, we just add some more information that we think it is necessary for the audience to know. But if we don't have an MC, we could introduce ourselves to the audience. So this is the way we we want to show the audience that our presentation is worth it. Okay, we could say like, "Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start the presentation by introducing myself. My name is Iskandar Abdul Samad. I am a permanent lecturer in the English Education Department of Shakwala University and also alumni of University of New England, Australia. My research interest is in genre studies and language teaching. I have done a lot of research in these fields. I also have established a community foundation called Rumah Bahasa, where I also teach English to help the Alchinists to master English." Okay, now we will see next slide. So this is about giving title and introducing subject. So when we give a presentation, we need to mention about this one. So what exactly are you going to speak about, right? And then situate the subject in time and place in relation to the audience, the importance of our speech, and then give a rough idea or a working definition of the subject. So this is very important. So you could say like the word, "I plan to speak about blah, blah, blah," or "Today I'm going to talk about," or "The subject of my presentation is," and then "The theme of my talk is," or "I have been asked to talk to you about." So we try to give a title and introducing the subject of our presentation. And then the second one is announcing the time limit. So this is very important too. So you ask yourself, have you limited the time? It is useful to give the listeners some idea of the time so as to maintain their attention better. So you could use the word, "I will not speak about blah, blah, blah," or "I have limited my speech to," or "I will speak for about 15 minutes," or "My talk will last about 15 minutes. So we could announce the time limit of our presentation. And then next is giving your objectives. So we have to mention about the objectives, which include the purpose, aims, and goals. So you could use the word like, "My purpose in doing this paper is to give you a solid background on the subject of oral presentation so that in the future you can deliver a successful speech in front of a group." Or you could say, "What I would like to do today is to explain blah, blah, blah." Or "What I would like to do today is to illustrate blah, blah, blah." Or to give a general overview of, or to outline, or to have a look at. Or you could say, "What I want my listeners to get out of my speech is." So there are plenty of words that you could choose, to mention about your presentation objectives. And then you could follow by mentioning your outline. So announce your outline. You want to keep the outline simple. So 2 or 3 main points are usually enough. So 2 or 3 are enough for, um, for the presentation. Concerning grammar, the headings of the outline should be of the same grammatical forms. So you could say the word like, I have broken my speech up into, yeah, how many parts? Or I have divided my presentation into maybe 3 parts, for example. Or you could use the word like, in the first part, I give a few basic definitions. In the next section, I will explain blah, blah, blah. In part 3, I'm going to show blah, blah, blah. In the last place, I would like or want to give you a practical example. So if you have 4 points, then you could use, an example of words, the last example. And then at the beginning of your presentation, you could also announce whether you want to be distracted by the audience by asking questions or give comments. Okay. So you should also let the audience know at some point in the introduction when they may or may not ask questions. So you could use the word, I would ask you to save your questions for the end, or there will be plenty of time at the end of my speech for questions and discussion. So these 2 words, you use them when you don't want to be disrupted by the audience, okay, while you are talking. If you want to be distracted by the questions, you could say, or you could use the word, you may interrupt me at any moment to ask questions or make comments. So it really up to you as a presenters whether whether you want the audience ask you questions at the end of the session or in the middle of your presentation. Well, that's all our discussion today, and I hope it benefits you all. Thank you very much, and see you again in the next videos. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.